The little tour he took me makes me think this is a great program and the innovative aspect of how he does it and giving this opportunity incubator for anybody, students, veterans in the community. That's awesome. I usually like to get to know each other a little bit, especially it's really great when there's an intimate group here. And so if you can go around, tell me your name, what you're doing now, and what you hope to do in terms of I assume the entrepreneurial world, if you have any idea. So.
I am Hannah. I am in the MAC program, the Master of Accounting program now, and this is my last quarter. Yes, for my accounting career, I'm going to be a CPA.
Good, good. You'll be a good one. Yes.
My name is Brenda. I am studying business, and I'm opening my own nanny agency company.
What agency?
Nanny.
Oh, right. Mm-hmm.
So,
Recruitment?
yes.
Yes.
Placement agency.
Great.
My name's Avery. I'm a marketing major, and I'm just kind of exploring, starting little businesses and stopping them, and just kind of exploring and seeing what I like.
Great. This is a good place to start or be part of your path.
I'm Jessica. I am a finance major. I want to be a financial advisor.
Great. Yeah.
And I'm Kurt. I have a degree from University of Sound in finance and accounting. Mm-hmm. And I'm also a CPA. Mm-hmm. Spent 25 years in commercial banking. And since 2010, I've been a financial advisor with a small firm here downtown Tacoma.
Oh, yeah. You can offer her some advice.
My name is Steven. I'm an accounting major right now, working on my bachelor's. My goal is I'm hoping to get into real estate.
All right. That's great. So now it's my turn to introduce myself. Again, my name is Rose Gunderson. I'm the Small Business Liaison with Labor and Industries. I've been there for just a little over 2 years. I've never thought about being in government because before that I've been in the private where I got a business degree from UW and then later on got a law degree to explore what I was going to do. I love law, and then I became a human trafficking research intern at the Attorney General's office. Through that, started a nonprofit, which I was doing. I've had multiple entrepreneurial experience because I quit the corporate world, so I could have my own enterprise at home to stay home with my kids, raise 3 kids, and went to law school, and then started a nonprofit. Did that for about 5 years and got it to a place where I feel like it's best for the founder to leave. Because if the founder doesn't leave, it will not survive. That's the way nonprofit works. Because if it's too personnel dependent. And it's still going. And I got this job. Never thought I would work for government, but I have so much business experience, small business, corporate, and entrepreneurial experience that they really wanted my skill to help people like you or help government staff to know how to communicate with you at the same time. So I have responsibilities to work with internal staff and customers. So it makes my job really fun. Feel free to ask me questions along the way. I don't feel like I'm really well prepared because I don't usually come and talk about tax per se, but I've done all kinds of tax. I still prepare our family business, different businesses, get most everything together to the CPA. And so I've worked with them at every level, whether it's state tax, federal tax, city tax. So I've been a customer. I'm also in a regulatory role. So it makes me a very interesting hybrid. All right, I have to talk about my agency and what we're about, but it will help you understand why we have these quote-unquote tax for workers' compensation insurance purpose. Labor and Industries is a complex agency, but we are about making sure every workplace with employees will be safe. It could be just an office job all the way to the high-risk job. The most high risk is logging. So we have responsibilities for all that, and I'll talk more later. When you think about it, if you are thinking about planning for a business and you're going to hire people, your most important asset is your work team when you have a business. You got to make sure how you can help them do well on their job and be safe at the same time, because there's consequence. And if you make safety part of your core value, it's to your advantage because you build trust with them, you build stability, and you save money in the long run.
I see a lady with like a yoga mat.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm assuming, because I started a gym, and maybe I should have told you this, but.
I don't, yeah.
Okay, but anyway, we didn't hire him as an employee, we hired him as a 1099.
Yeah.
It's a contract, so.
So that's a common misunderstanding. You're not the only one. There are, and I'll talk about a little bit too and explain that. But thanks for the question. And and I've talked about our mission. And this is something, independent contractor versus employee relationship is very easily misunderstood. And not until I got to L&I, then I realized I used to do it wrong too. So I'll just admit my fault. Now I tell my husband, you cannot do this, you have to do this. You know, he has a private advisor. and I have to say, not to say CPAs are wrong, my CPA has given me wrong advice as well. And when I go out and talk about these employee relationship or compliance with state and all that, I say don't rely on your CPA or attorney. Come talk to us when it comes to independent contractor, because the federal level of independent contractor defined by the law defined at the IRS level is different than the state for workers' compensation or unemployment insurance purposes. Every agency has a different set of law. Just because you check with one agency about independent contractor or 1099 and you thought you understood it, you have to check with another agency because they're different sets of law. So just explains it. All right, I kind of break it down like this. This is like a one view at the best I can to explain to you what businesses have to do when they, what different taxes that they have to deal with. To the best of my knowledge, there are other things, you know, they always have these little taxes, but this is applicable to most businesses. When it's blue, that's when you have employees. When it's black, you're gonna have to pay that kind of tax just because you have a business, unless you meet the threshold level where you're exempt from the B&O tax or excise tax. So the orange is the frequency. And you can see, you know, I try to abbreviate because I don't have enough room. All right, we'll start from the top. This is a wonderful, especially, I assume you come from a different country, right?
Yes.
Yeah, to understand our federal government, state government, county government, city government is crazy. I grew up in Hong Kong. And so to understand the federal system is just, and difficult for Americans, it's even harder for foreign nationals. So we'll start from the federal government. The IRS is the agency you pay the federal tax to. When I say quarterly or annual, that depends on how you arrange it. When it comes to business, when you're self-employed, you pay an estimate tax on a quarterly basis. And then you actually file the real tax annually. So let's just do the black first for simplicity's sake, assuming you don't have any employee. When you don't have employee, but our state has this B&O tax. It's one of the variety of excise tax, business and occupational tax. It is based on your revenue, not your profit. Whatever you collect is how they tax you. And the rate varies depending on your industry. And how often you pay it depends on the volume of your revenue as well. So you just have to check with them and they will explain to you, hopefully. I'll tell you, I have a secret list. Then, if your business owns properties like desk, equipment, anything that you purchase under your business as expense, you have to report to the county and they assess the value and you pay property tax. From my experience, it's like your property tax for your home or whatever, it's twice a year. So I call it biannual. And some cities would also require payment of B&O tax and you pay it at a quarterly basis. So any questions so far?
Yeah, the B&O tax at the state level, is that based on gross revenue or are you allowed some deductions before that?
Deduction, if you have a refund, you deduct that. And so it's the net collection. Other than that, there's not a whole lot of exemption. It's just straight. So it's not very fair, in my opinion. But I didn't write the tax because some businesses have a much higher profit margin than others. And some are, so the ones that have a lot of expenses end up paying disproportionately more because their net profit is, the margin is less. You see what I'm saying? You guys are all number people, so
Particularly if you're a startup.
Yes.
It can be very challenging your first several years to get the profitability if you're having to pay a tax on your gross.
Yeah. So there's I'm not from that agency. I know there's a smaller exemption.
Oh.
I have a question. For property, what happens when you're in home? Like
When it's in your home, strictly speaking, yes, you still have to report it. I'm not going to tell you the rest of it. It's hard for It's an honor system. But they have the right to, I don't know how county government works that much. They still have, it's very unlikely county and city audit you, but they could. I don't know. I've never been audited by city or county. But that's kind of an honor system, I think, because they look at, they could come back and look at what you've purchased under your businesses and why haven't you paid the property tax.
So that kind of answered your question. My other business is I have a property management company. It's just a sole proprietor.
Yeah.
Okay, and so I have a home office, and I also have an office right down the street. So the research background check company says, well, if you have a home office, we need to come in and take a picture of your office and where you file all your reports. Because if they get audited and say, who are your clients? Because at least they have information on me. It says this is where our client's office is based out of because they have sensitive information.
Yeah.
So they have to take pictures of my file cabinets and how big my office is and all that. And outside of my house, because I only have a certain portion that I use for the office. So I don't know if that's related, but I have to go through a lot of.
So those are your clients that want to understand their risk,
Yeah.
what kind of risk they're dealing with. Yeah. Yeah, and so it's it holds you accountable.
Yeah.
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 Thank you. Feel free to chime in because I don't have complete knowledge of everything, and that is a good piece of additional information. Not all cities are exacting, asking for excise tax, but this is something that is really, I call it madness in Washington State. Cities have a different B&O tax rate, and they're all different. So imagine a catering business. They go to different locations, and they have to have a city license with every location that they are going to travel to do catering. And then they have to pay the B&O tax differently for each catering business depending on where they go to. What do you call that? Madness. But again, I'm not the policymaker. There have been efforts to try to unify that, but getting an agreement is not easy. So that's all I'm going to say. It is very challenging, but you have to pay attention to municipal variances. Now minimum wages are different between Tacoma and Seattle and the state. You have to pay attention to where you send your workers. So for a catering business or a landscaping business, and if you have an employee and they go to different jurisdictions, then you have to pay different minimum wages. You have to pay different excise tax or B&O tax. So that is really challenging for small enterprises. So count your cost, but there are also a lot of benefits of having your own business too. So, but it's just something important to watch.
So I've been sort of following what Seattle's doing. They want to, if you live in a city proper, and you work in Seattle, whatever, they're going to do a personal income tax.
That didn't go through the
okay.
court said Washington State Constitution does not allow that.
Yeah, they'll have to appeal it to the next level.
Okay.
But they haven't decided to appeal it, at least they.
I haven't heard more.
Okay.
Yeah.
They're kind of crazy up there.
Very crazy.
Yeah, Pierce County is a different environment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right. So now we go back to when you have employees, what kind of tax you're gonna have to deal with. And then you start having payroll. Then when you have payroll, you have to do withholding, FICA, that includes the withholding for what the employee asks you to withhold, and also the portion of the Social Security and Medicare, Medicaid. I used to know these terms. So that's that. Whether you do it bi-monthly or quarterly or annually, again, depends on your different things. The 941 is when you have employees, you deduct FICA tax from them, and then you add your portion, then you remit it to the federal government at these kind of frequencies. 940 is the federal unemployment tax. It's a very low rate, and it's paid by the employer. And from my memory, it's remitted once a year, and maybe some larger businesses with more may do it quarterly. All right, now we'll go to the state level. When you have employees, then you're responsible for paying their unemployment insurance to Employment Security Department, and workers' compensation insurance. It's an insurance, it's premium, but we call it tax because L&I is a monopoly. Only the state runs this insurance, and actually the biggest insurance company is L&I in the state of Washington. It's Labor and Industry. And that both of these you pay quarterly. I will explain a little bit more. Now, going back to, I'll talk about later. I have some topics related to independent contractors later. So once when you decide to have employees, you are gonna, the process is kind of convoluted. You actually go to apply for having employees at the Department of Revenue system, and then it will come downstream and will set up the account for you, and then you'll start interacting with these two departments. So those are process details. Any questions on these different taxes that are most commonly applicable to most businesses with?
So I do have a question.
Mm-hmm.
So I know if you have your own personal business, it'd be more tricky to do so, but how about franchises? Because I know they have their own system. Now, do you have to go through them to file the taxes individually, like for the employers, or do you still?
It depends on the setup of the very franchise. Now, supposedly, depending on what law you're looking at, supposedly franchise owners are their own, you have your own business, even they're just buying the brand and all that. So it depends on the setup.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. So I want to pass around this resource. Besides, I'm the small business liaison, and you can keep these here for your, there are different small business liaisons at each agency. Now, I'm proud to say L&I is the only agency with a dedicated program, two of us, dedicated to support small businesses, when most other agencies' liaisons are just the first contact. They have a lot of other responsibilities. They just will tell you where to go from there. This is a list of agencies where small businesses have the potential of interacting with them, like the cannabis. If you're liquor, cannabis, then you interact with them. And Department of Ecology, when you set up your shop, you might have to deal with their requirements. And the state actually has this is the small business liaison team. We meet once a month and try to understand and try to promote education for all of you out there. So we talk to each other. If you have questions related to Secretary of State, you start with me because you know me. It's totally okay. And I can refer you. I could even answer some of your questions. I know a little bit about every agency. If I can't answer, then I'll refer. The state has developed this tool. It's a manual that you can obtain online, download, and it's also in Spanish, Chinese, Korean, Vietnamese, and Russian. So it has all the information related to, and in my outreach card, inside it has this kind of, and you can take one of these. It's a very useful tool that tells you what you need to do while you're planning, starting, hiring, running, closing your business. My outreach card has that. Another, this is the same, this is a search engine version of the manual. So if you like to just Google, put in payroll, and you will search most of the information that's coming from that booklet, Small Business Guide. So this is mostly updated, the best that we have to offer to learn about state tax, and there's also a chapter related to federal payroll tax as well. Okay, now I'm going to talk about L&I. L&I has a ton of programs. This is just the top few. Workers' compensation, workplace health and safety, or safety and health. Have you heard of OSHA, Occupational Safety and Health Act? Washington State, the federal government administers the OSHA. Washington State has WISHA, the Washington Industrial Safety and Health Act. We are being delegated by the federal government to administer OSHA in the state of Washington. So we inspect, that means every business could be subject to inspection for one reason or another. usually it could be random, it could be complaint driven. So make sure you do, and oftentimes it's disgruntled employees or ex-girlfriend, ex-spouses, or ex-boyfriend. Your ex might do that to you. I mean, we have agency data to know where they come from. So, or if you have a fatality or serious injury, we will come inspect. If you have something that do not meet the requirements, then you will receive a citation. That means you pay money for it. So to minimize having to deal with that kind of bad financial consequence, we offer consultations that are free. But you have to, the business has to invite us in, and our consultants offer safety consultation, ergonomics consultation, industrial hygiene. That means noise, odor, chemical, that kind of industrial hygiene consultations, because some businesses have a higher exposure to that situation. We also do risk management consultation. And we recommend that for every new business, especially when you have a office space, to come and explain to you how workers' comp work, how you can think about saving money and on your premium, how you can qualify for it, and what you can do to change your policies so that you can do smart hiring and smart retention. Because when you have an employee who's not cooperative about following the safety guidelines, it's best to say goodbye. Or because the responsibility is on you. It's not because you're the employer. So that's the employer responsibility. Employment standards, wage and hours, so the minimum wage, overtime, and in Washington State, we have a new pay sick leave law that's effective this year. And teen workers, if you have, it has a different set of regulations. So those are employment standards. Now, remember, the federal government also has a different set of wage and hour, and they administered by the Department of Labor. The federal minimum wage is $7 still. The state is $11.50. So which one applies?
State.
Whichever is more favorable to the worker will apply. So there are differences. Like in Seattle, their minimum wage is higher than the state level because it's more favorable than the worker, the higher wage applies.
So can I add something to that? So mostly when it comes to federal and state, a federal can set a standard. So states can't go below the federal standard, but they can always add on to the federal standard.
In general, that is correct. Contractor registration in our state to protect consumers, and also we don't qualify whether someone could be a roofer or a cement worker. We just have them registered. They need to have liability insurance and also a bond. So in case you hire them and they default or have bad work, at least you can go after their bond or liability insurance. That's what we do that for. Electrician and plumber licensing, that's what we do. We actually qualify them to go through tests and all that. Permits, when you do any electrical work, when you have an elevator, factory assembled structures are really like food trucks, motorhomes. We issue permit for every one of them before they can be put to use. And we issue permits prevailing wage projects. That means anything that has to do with government contract work, whether it's for school districts, city, state, they all need to pay prevailing wage rate, which is a different set of rate. They do survey to come up with that, and depending on the location, it varies. So if you're for contractors who do construction work type of thing, those are all required to pay prevailing wage, those kind of projects. Apprenticeships, our state administers the registration of apprenticeships to make sure every business that hires and have an apprenticeship relationship truly does what they're supposed to do, instead of putting them in a slavery, not giving them the training that they're supposed to get so that they are bona fide and qualified. Traditional apprenticeships are, electrical plumbers, and, we know those. But nowadays, we have a lot more innovative apprenticeship programs, including computer coding and culinary, and even wood shops, and quite a lot more, medical and dental assistants. But they're new. Some locations have better experience in setting that up than others, but it's being developed, it's growing. And it's actually our state's apprenticeship program is being picked by the federal government as the example of replication in other states.
So apprenticeship and student interns. Now, I know that there's some businesses that contact me and they always
Yes.
say, can we get student interns? Is that legal? Because they want free labor.
Yeah. So I'll tell you the differentiation.
Okay.
For businesses, they can have interns, but unless there is an educational purpose and an agreement, an arrangement with the school that justifies the education instead of, it's for the benefit of the student, not for the benefit of the business, then you can have unpaid internship. And you have to be able to put it in writing and explain it. For nonprofit, that is not, the requirement is somewhat different because nonprofits can have volunteers and that are really contributing to the nonprofit instead of the other way around. So that's where you can make the differentiation. One more thing is that for businesses that are interested in having an intern unpaid, they can also opt to have workers' compensation to protect the student, but that workers' comp insurance is only medical. There's no time loss because there's no pay involved. And even there are interns within the school system, like at the college, a professor might have an intern to do projects or whatever. That is the option to actually protect the student, to give them the medical benefit. But the good thing now is that no matter, the employer can choose to just pay 100 hours per year for that intern, no matter how many hours that intern actually works. We want to, I think the intent, the legislature passed that to make paperwork easier for this kind of situation. So, does that answer your question? And we have apprenticeship consultants from our agencies located in all regions that can help businesses set up apprenticeships. All right, we talk about, you're familiar with these business life cycle, and this is what one view of how a business could connect to L&I and think about L&I depending on the stage of business they're in. So I have this here. If it's too hard for you to see the screen, the blue blocks indicate something. They're pretty much relevant to all employers. I put contractor registration blue, even though, assuming that everyone is going to maybe use someone to fix something or whatever. I have not thought about it before I work at LNI. In my past experience, I just hire somebody because of someone's recommendation to fix my plumbing, to fix my roof, whatever. That's the way I used to do things. Now I realize I better check that they have contractor registration to protect myself so that if they default or do a poor workmanship, I have the bond or whatever to go after. And I get a lot of phone calls from sometimes homeowners who call and say, I have this contractor, paid him $20,000, the work was bad or whatever. By then it's too late. Because there are a lot of private consumers who have lost big money because a contractor some bad apples out there are out to fraud people. When you buy or merge a business with a business, and especially if you're thinking about buying a business, you make sure that you check their records. Now, when it comes to LNI, their claim history is something you want to know. Do they have a bad claim history? If they do, you inherit that claim history. That means when you buy a car, it's like when you buy a car, the history of the bad driver comes to your car insurance. That's how it works. The reason is that's the law that says the safety culture, when you buy that business, same location, same employees, same type of thing, same experience factor. You pay higher insurance if they've had a bad claim history. Or if they have an outstanding debt to LNI or outstanding audit that we'd have not even assessed how much they owe, you better find out that all of that information, because if they assess the audit after you buy it, that debt, that assessment is yours. So be very careful. I've talked about risk management consultation. I recommend it during the planning or starting stage of a business. Owner's coverage, workers' compensation insurance is not required for the owner. You can choose to have it, but you don't have to. You're not mandated to carry it. You're mandated to carry it for your employees. We've talked about these. So when you hire, that's when you start workers' compensation account. Cover workers versus independent contractor. Let me see how much time I have. Oh, good, I have 20 minutes. How do I explain it in the best way? The most simple way that you can think about whether the person should be paid 1099 or be an employee, the first thing you ask, do you have a business license? If you don't, you have to be my employee, period. That's the easiest first question to ask. Now, the more complex question is, even if that person has a business license, you have to think. It's the direction and control that is the most not so easy question to answer. But you have to think about, do I mandate the time of work for that person? And where they do work, do I train that person? Do I schedule time for that person to come in and out? Do I mandate them to wear the uniform on site? Do I make them clean the place? Or do they incur no business expense except that I just pay them for the time they work? Those are clear, easy questions that you have to ask yourself. For example, massage therapists often are, the owner and then have several massage therapists. Who makes the schedule? If the owner makes the schedule, then these massage therapists are not independent contractors. They're employees. So that's direction and control. How often do they get paid? Is there a contract that says, you do this work for this period of time and I pay you this amount? You know, it's really, massage therapists are like piece rate workers. They're not independent contractors, even though they have their own license that they have to keep. Does that make sense? Yes.
At the same, some small business, they will choose to whether they hire the accountant or they hire the CPA to do the.
Right. So a bookkeeper, if the bookkeeper has his or her own license or a CPA, and they just come on site and collect the information from you, and then they go off and do it. But they come on site and use your equipment, that might change the story. So I'm not the expert in making a determination of that relationship. We have extra technical specialists that can to do that. What I'm telling you is the general principles. Every situation is different, but examples that I've given hopefully provide you enough information to think about asking those questions. And also, if that person has a business license, come in now and do their own thing, but they really don't incur any business expense, everything is on you, and they don't work for other people, and they are not going out there and soliciting for business, that also does not qualify. So we have this 6-part test in our law that you have to look at. For contractors, it's a 7-part test because they also have to have contractor registration. Make sense so far? So it's something that we really highly recommend you in every relationship. Talk to us. We can help you make a determination. And there are even business attorneys who I personally experienced at my job or outside of work that have written a business contract and say, oh, this is going to take care of it. This is not an employee relationship because of the way I wrote up the contract. You cannot write a contract to avoid the law. A piece of contract is voidable if it conflicts with the law. Does that make sense? So that's where you need to go. You can't just rely on an attorney. You have to check with the source. LNI is the one that makes the determination on that law.
Quick question. So there are some tax result about those 2 ways, right?
Test results?
Tax result for the independent contractor.
Yeah, we have a lot of booklets that you can read, and we can also you can also submit if you have a specific working relationship. You want a determination, we'll help you do that as well.
There are lots of maybe. There are lots of requirements or laws.
Making a determination, coming to us to make a determination is not a requirement.
Okay.
But it would be wise if you have some special situation. I'll tell you, so recently I know that someone got audited, a business owner has employees and everything, but somehow they got their kid to mow the lawn and got caught and was assessed for not making them employees. So I just want you to know all of that, it counts, even if they only work for you for a few hours. Casual laborer, if they don't pass the independent contractor 6-part test, it's still your employee. You still have to cover them with workers' compensation, even if they're your own kid. The only exemption is if they are on name in real life bona fide owners of the business, then they're exempt. On my website, if you, my program's website, we have a lot of different resources and links. If you come to this page, you will find a lot of helpful information for you to learn more about things related to L&I. There's also a link to the Small Business Guide that I talked about. There's also a roadmap for new business owner, how to get your license and different steps. This is really long, so I put it this way. But if you go to the DOR, and you have a copy of this slide, so you can provide it for them. This is a really good, useful infographic 10-page map that you can use if you're going to start a business. Does anybody have questions about what's an LLC, whether you should do an LLC or questions like that? A limited liability corporation? Have you heard of that?
How is an LLC taxed?
LLC is very good question, and there's an easy misunderstanding. LLC is a status that you register with the state. Whether you're an LLC or not does not affect how you're being taxed. At the IRS level, you pay tax depending on whether you are sole proprietor, S corporation, C corporation. Those statuses will make the difference as to how you are being taxed. LLC is a liability limitation type of thing set up, and you register that with the state Secretary of State. So they're two different things. And the contact person from the Secretary of State will help you understand that too. So, any specific questions related to your future endeavor?
Let's go back to the, I'm sorry, let's go back to the, I like the, it kind of woke me up when you said that somebody got in trouble having their kid mow the lawn.
Yeah.
Well, is that still like the same if I hire somebody to mow my lawn on my properties that I just,
For your home?
no, for my rental properties? It's never consistent. It's always different people that I find.
Yeah,
Running around.
same thing. Yeah, for your rental property, it's considered a business, so
Yeah.
that's when you have to start looking at the independent contractor, whether they are
Yeah.
truly own their own business situation.
They just, those landscapers come and go, and it's just like. They don't-
Yeah, with landscapers, you just have to, that's why it's important that you make sure they are registered. Landscaping business need to, if it's landscaping, they need to register. If it's just mowing lawns, they don't need to register
Okay.
as a contractor, but they still need to have a business license.
Okay.
Like, even if it's like your neighbor's 14-year-old kid or something.
If they're mowing your business rental, yes, you need to make it it's a business relationship. If the kid is only mowing your home, residential home's lawn, it's not under our jurisdiction. That as far as I know, but I'm not all-knowing. It's in a home situation but it's best to protect yourself. Anytime you have someone work for your even home, if they get injured, you're the employer in your home. So, I'll take it back. Even if you hire someone to mow your lawn for your home, you have to think about what will happen if that kid was injured. And it's a working relationship. You could potentially be liable for not having coverage, workers' compensation. So in the state of Washington, this is the law. All workers are assumed to be covered by workers' compensation. unless they pass the 6-part test. So, thank you so much.